Harvey, that was a quick introduction to an amazing career so far. I mean, it's going to continue for a couple of decades. 321 times you've been nominated for an Oscar just producing or executive producing. You've won it personally for Shakespeare in Love as a producer. I would like to start, from the top, basically. What triggered your interest in movies? I mean, do you remember the first movie that you saw and you basically said, this is what I want to do when I grow up?
The first movie I saw was Hercules Unchained, and that did not inspire me. The second movie I saw was actually Old Yella, and the idea of Gregory Peck having to shoot the dog, whatever, I saw the emotionality of that movie because I kept questioning that decision with my dad. So that inspired me. But the real thing that inspired me to make movies was I had an eye injury when I was a kid, 10, 11 years old, and like we were playing Cowboys and Indians, and I couldn't go to school because I looked like Quasimodo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And a woman next door to me was a librarian, and she got me reading at a very young age. And I asked her just because I could finish my homework quickly. It wasn't that much. And television was not like it is today. There was no internet. There were 3 channels in my house, and you had to go upstairs to the roof and hang the hanger to get the station right. So instead, I went into the world of books, and I was lucky enough that I understood, some of the great American authors, and then I ended up at the end of it when I went back to school, having read most of the Russians. Understood Tolstoy, didn't understand Dostoevsky, and all these years later, I still don't understand Dostoevsky. So, but reading Chekhov, reading some of the simpler things, fired up my imagination. And I think that the way you can tell stories today, you can write them, of course, or you can make movies. And I chose the latter path.
Why produce? Why not direct? Or why not act? Was it always something that you said, I want to produce, I want to be in charge?
Well, if you ever see me produce, with the exception of maybe Quentin Tarantino and Marty Scorsese, Michelle Williams always said, I know why you don't produce. She said, because you direct 8 movies at the same time. But that's not true, however. But we do get to tell 8 stories at the same time. And so I guess there's a quantity. But I am going to direct. I keep saying it. The script is finished. It's called Mila 18 by Leona Uris, and I will make that movie sooner than later.
Are you afraid to take that challenge? I mean, is that something that you because you have you produced so many movies, is that going to be something completely different, directing?
I have so many directors who want to produce that movie. Marty Scorsese said he would do it, and then he cut the 3 hours and make it a 10-minute short. I mean, Darren Aronofsky, they are lined up, Quentin, right around the block. Everybody who I ever said cut something, it's like a bakery. I could auction off who's going to produce Harvey's movie for charity, and there would not be a need for the Cancer Society.
What does a movie need to have, or a story need to have, for you in order to produce it, or to buy the rights?
I guess it goes back to Old Yella, right? You know what I mean? The emotionality. And for me, I like stories about outsiders. I felt like one when I was a kid. And I think that it's inspirational to do that, educational, and, without being medicine, and just great writing. And, as I was a kid who read great writers, the writing that I try to do has a lot to measure up to because of the writers that I loved and still love all these years later.
You already mentioned, or we spoke about it earlier, working with your brother. When did you actually know that you and Bob would be a perfect match to work together in this industry? I have 2 brothers, and I don't think I will ever work with them. I love them, but it's going to be hard, to work with someone out of your family.
I mean, my brother is, doesn't get enough credit, and he was the big, person who fought for Sex, Lies, and Videotape and fought for Reservoir Dogs, both which became amazing relationships with Quentin and Steven Soderbergh in our life. They were acquisitions, and then we ended up producing movies with those guys. But I'll tell you the best story about working with my brother. Rather than I looked at Bob and said, "Wow, he's a genius." I was 4 and he was 2. No, but that's not the story. Here's the story. The story is my mom said that about both of us. They're geniuses. They're geniuses. They can spell. You have a Jewish mother, guys. Whatever. You could kill somebody in front of her. She goes, "That wasn't my son, I promise you. He's too nice a kid." Working with my brother was, and I told Stefan this story, when we made Scream, it was a script that came to us from a young writer, and Kevin Williamson, and there were 2 or 3 other companies bidding against it, and Kerry Woods brought it to our attention, and the clock was ticking and the money was up there for the auction. And my brother said, "You know what, before I bid all this money, even though I love it and I'm gonna make it, I better have Harvey read it." So he brings the script down to my office and I start reading it. And him and the 2 guys who work with him, they don't leave my office. They're hovering over me. I read the first 20 pages. They say, "How's the first 20 pages?" I said, "It was good. Can you guys leave? I'm just going to read the script." They said, "Read the next 20. I read the next 20. "How's the 20 pages?" I said, "Really, really good." The next 20, I read those. "How is it?" "Good, good, 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 good." 20. And then I read the next 20. I'm at 80. And my brother goes, "What do you think?" I said, "It's really good." He takes the script. He says, "You don't have to read the rest. The ending's fantastic." And I go, "Bob, leave me the script." He goes, "No, we might need it. I'll see you later." And he bought Scream.
That's the way it goes.
And I didn't get to read the script until 2 days later.
We already spoke about what inspires you and what you like and what's important in this story. There are a couple of movies that I, wrote down that are really interesting in the way that you push the marketing wise. Shakespeare in Love, for example, The Artist, a great movie, but a movie, a silent movie in black and white. I mean, that's something completely unheard of in a time when, James Cameron does Avatar in 3D and next one is 60 frames per second. What did you see in those movies and how did you go about, sort of marketing them up to such an success? Because The Artist won Oscars, it became a huge success all over the world. I mean, what did you see in that picture that you said, this is going to be great?
Well, with Shakespeare in Love, I read this incredible script by Tom Stoppard. It's actually Tom Stoppard and Mark Norman, but I produced it, and under my deal, Tom did 90%. I never asked Mark to write one word, even though he wrote the early construction of the script. It was working with Stoppard, and also, if you know him, he's a great playwright and an amazing man to work with, and I loved it. But the obstacles were incredible on Shakespeare in Love. So I read this incredible script and I say, I want to make this movie. And Miramax is just really starting to produce bigger movies. And Universal said, we want $9 million because they had actually built sets for Daniel Day-Lewis and Julia Roberts. And they said, we can't sell it to you unless we get our money back. I said, but at least you sell it to me and we'll give you a percentage and you can possibly get your money back. And they go, no, we need our money back. So in the craziest decision I ever made, and I had Bob read the script, only I didn't hover over him, whatever. I let him read it, and spoke to him the next day, and he said, Harvey, this is great, go for it. We wrote a check. We didn't even have the money. We wrote a check for $4.5 million to Universal to buy the script. And then the movie, then we made the movie, and it was just in the early days of Disney, and they backed the play because they felt our passion, for making this movie, and us believing in it the way we did. So even though it was out of our budget, and even though we shouldn't have done it, Joe Roth was running the studio at that time, and he felt, whatever, he could hear the passion in our voices. And we went on to make the movie, and the movie won the Best Picture, and that was that. Produce a great movie, and chances are you can market it well too. What's really tough is marketing the bad movies, so that's when you're marketing well. So we've had a few of those, but whose names shall not be mentioned. But with The Artist, I just watched the movie. It was an acquisition. We had nothing to do with producing it or anything. I sat in a room with Vincent Marivelle at Wild Bunch, and it was like, Marivelle and I were like the movie whisperers to each other. They call us they call me sometimes Harvey Scissorhands. Such bullshit. It's because it's just like the competition years ago tried to pass that on, and whatever, and they're so far behind, you know. But I could hear Vincent's voice. He said, "Come to Paris. There's something about this movie." And you know, he said that before about other movies, but he didn't have that tone. And I heard it, and I went and saw the movie, and it blew me away. And I knew in the room that I felt the movie was going to win the Best Picture in the room after the movie stopped. And I told these guys that at least we would get nominated, but I felt even stronger because I felt it was so different. And also, I think we all live in a world where we have our phones, and I don't know about you guys, I get a text and I feel like I'm addicted. I have to answer it back, even if it's like from my cousin who I haven't seen in 45 years, whatever, you know, just like, "How are you?" "Great, nice to see you." You know, "Where are you?" "Zurich." But, you know, and I think what this to me was take your telephone out, take your text out, take everything away, surrender. You know what I mean? Whatever, you can't hear, you know what I mean, whatever, this is something completely different. And I felt that people would embrace the experience. And they did around the world. And I think on that movie, you know, I'll tell you why I think we marketed it well. The movie opened in France first. Most people, you know, don't know that. And it didn't do that well. And it was a French movie with France's biggest movie star, Jean Dujardin. Then we took it over, and we had our own marketing campaign, and then we told them to re-release it in France, and it did very well. So in that situation, you know, I mean, we have really great people at my company, and I think what makes us marketers and people say we're really good at is we're imaginative. You know what I mean, we don't run the same boring ad with, you know, somebody's face in the movie. You know what, again and again and again and again. We ran just as many ads for the dog as we ran for Jean Dujardin. And there were times when I thought the dog was better looking than Jean Dujardin.
Jumping back to Shakespeare in Love, when you received the Oscar up on stage, how did that make you feel? And you told that story. It was interesting that there were quite a couple of producers up on stage.
Well, something good happened out of something bad. You know, 5 producers, you know, were accepted for Shakespeare in Love, and the Producers Guild now has a rigorous process for determining who's a producer. Now, the legend is that you know what I mean, whatever, what was I doing running Miramax, you know, making a speech? But the real legend was that a lawyer named Bert Fields, who's one of the toughest lawyers in Hollywood, I had to buy the script out of Universal, and they had me over the barrel because Ed Zwick, the director, had developed it, and Mark Norman was the original writer. So Bert Fields said to me, you know, whatever, you have to make them producers. I go, "They're not producers. Why should I make them producers?" "You make them producers because it's going to raise their pay." And I finally said, if this is the only way I can get this goddamn movie, I never thought about Academy Awards or anything like that. I made them producers. Mark Norman never came to the set. Ed Zwick never came to the set. As a matter of fact, Ed Zwick was directing another movie and tried to get Gwyneth Paltrow, who was playing my role, to do his movie during the same period of time. So that's how much he produced the movie. So these two schnooks, whatever, you know what I mean? You know, whatever, Ed Zwick, they're not schnooks, whatever, but these two guys, they certainly accepted an Oscar. They had no false modesty whatsoever. I think they felt that they developed it early, and that entitled them to an Oscar. So, I made the speech after Donna Gelati, who did produce the movie, and David Parfit, who did produce the movie, and I produced the movie because I took a leave of absence from running my company to produce the movie in Gangs of New York. And you know what I mean? And I accepted the award, and people go, "Oh, look at him stealing somebody's thunder for Best Picture." And it's made me very modest. I turned down taking the producer thing for Chicago, and you know, just other things, just because I measure that, I take that Oscar seriously. And it's been I told Stefan I'd correct the story here because we were laughing about it, and he said, "You should tell everybody." So a great thing happened. The Producers Guild now measures who produces a movie, and that's a great thing for our industry because producers are often thought of, you know, below anybody. I mean, and producers do so much work. They sometimes identify the material, they work on the material, they have great notes, they raise the money, they do working on the sets, or there are other producers who have a yacht, whatever, they call the unit production manager, "How's it going?" And they have some starlet put suntan lotion on their back, and they get a credit for producing the movie. That was not the way we were brought up. But the other great thing that happened after that, I said, how did he get Mark Norman And how did he get Ed Zwick to be producers on my movie? And I hired Burt Fields, the lawyer, afterwards, and that was one of the best things I ever did.
Is there a limit, because you just told the story about Shakespeare in Love and the $9 million and the check for $4.5 million that you did pay? Is there a limit for you when you basically say, I love the story, I want to do the movie, but I'm not going to pay that amount of money, or I'm not going to go through whatever I have to do to get it?
$4.5 million is the most money I've ever paid for anything, so it was more than we paid for the actors combined on Shakespeare in Love. So it was just how much I love that material. I haven't loved anything for $4.5 million since. It was an outrageous number.
But it was worth it back then.
It was worth every penny of it. And if I read something tomorrow that was 5.5, and that was the only way we could do it. If it really legitimately was the only way, I would do it. The other thing is, I think, all the time, people say, I like when artists make money. I like when people make money on my movies. I always think it's good advertising. So what, if we paid somebody too much? There's enough times when we don't pay them enough in this business. So I have a different feeling about all that. Maybe that's why actors like me. And I thought it was me.
Probably both. There's one director in particular that has become very famous through working with you, Quentin Tarantino.
I think I became more famous working with him. It's the other way around.
How did you stumble upon him, and how did you guys sort of meet, and what did you see in him and what he writes and does?
Quentin's a genius. There's no greater filmmaker, in my opinion, than Quentin. He's the most original voice, in my time in the movies. And I love him like a brother, a little brother. And working with him is remarkable. I will say that my little brother, Bob, loved Reservoir Dogs, turned me on to it. We bought the movie, and then we showed it to some people at Tribeca in our screening room. And here was my first bonding experience with Quentin. The ear scene came up, and my wife at the time, whatever, and her sister both ran out of the theater, whatever. And me and Quentin are hanging out, and he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "All right, Quentin, I'm going to tell you the truth from the word go. That's my wife. That's my sister-in-law." And they said, "How could you do that with the ear?" This is what they said to Quentin Tarantino. And now I started laughing, and Quentin started laughing, and we knew that there was always going to be an honesty bond between us. It wasn't like covering up anything, and we've always worked without a filter, and he's astonishing. So it's the best relationship I've ever had in the movie industry, and one that I hope will continue year after year after year.
There's another great relationship that came out of working with Quentin, Christoph Waltz. I mean, he's won 2 Oscars back-to-back, Inglourious Basterds and Django Unchained. Looking at European talent, Christoph is from Austria. You've worked with some German talent. What would you say? I mean, who do you like, from the German-speaking industry?
Well, I just worked with a young actor, Tom Schilling, in a movie called Sweet Francais. And if anything that I've ever done was a cousin to another movie, I think Sweet Francais is a cousin to The English Patient. And we certainly built it that way. It's a great story, and it's an epic story, like English Patient was. So he was great in the movie. Alexandra Maria Laura was great in the movie, too. I worked with her on The Reader. I worked with Kellen Huforth on The Reader. And I had a blast making Inglourious Basterds in Berlin, because Daniel Bruhl was great to work with. Christoph, of course, was great to work with, but nobody is more fun than Til Schweiger. I mean, man, oh man, everything you guys see, read about, watch his movies, he's even cooler than that, whatever. I mean, he would take us out, take us to places we never heard of, places that probably he never heard of, places that were probably open one night just for us that he probably opened, and I'm not going to tell you anything else, but we all were reading, no. He's an amazing guy, an amazing director on top of it. He's just one of a kind. And Daniel and Christoph are more reserved, and also fun guys. But Til Schweiger, I mean, Jesus, he's like, he's great.
he has made the transition to Hollywood. I mean, he's acted in a couple of movies, not as successfully as he has done in Germany. What do you think does a German-speaking actor need? I mean, is there potential for big stars like Christoph Waltz, Daniel Brühl? Does he have the potential? Caroline Herfurth, as you said, Alexandra Maria Lara. I mean, do they have the potential to become?
I think you're going to see it now. I mean, Christoph just finished the Tim Burton movie for me, Big Eyes. He's the leading man in the movie, not the supporting actor, and he's sensational opposite Amy Adams. And Daniel Brühl has done these 2 movies, Rush and The Fifth Estate, which he's great at. And Caroline, I think, can do anything. Alexandra Maria Lara, proves it too. So I think there's a wave of actors, who'll crisscross from Germany to everywhere, to France, to England, to America. So I think the next generation, is in good shape. And I think Christoph did a lot of the pioneer work, and laid a foundation. Winning, 2 movies, 2 Oscars, was great. He didn't win it for The Green Hornet, whatever. But I didn't produce The Green Hornet.
You produced a movie, not The Green Hornet, luckily, but The Reader. Another very famous and very successful movie. How did you stumble upon upon the book, and why do you think this would be a perfect movie for Kate Winslet and David Cross?
Michelle Ramo, who is a fantastic head of development and found us movies like Chocolat, Shipping News, and so many great movies. We heard from all over Europe that people were reading Bernard Schlink's novel, The Reader. And there was going to be a bidding war, and it was going to be crazy. And she said, I read it, I don't see the movie, don't worry about it. And that night, I came home with my books from the office, and I had The Reader tucked in my leather case. And my wife said to me, my first wife, it was, I don't know how many years ago this was, like 17 years ago. And my wife said to me, Lily, my daughter, is not feeling well tonight, and she had to go out to a fundraiser. She was associated with the ballet. She'd once been a dancer, and she wanted to, go with her friends to the fundraiser, and it was long-standing commitment. And she said, you got to be here, and we can't find anybody to babysit with you. And so just you and colicky Lily. So I went into Lily's room, and she would 15 minutes sleep, 15 minutes cough, 15 minutes sleep, 15 minutes cough. I had nothing to read in the 15 minutes that she was sleeping, except The Reader. I mean, this is how serendipitous things are sometimes. I read it, and after Eve came home and took care of the baby, I called Jason Blum in my office, and who was our head of acquisitions, and now he's the guy who produces Paranormal and all those horror movies. Blumhouse, I mean, he does like The Conjuring, all these incredible, he's so successful, and he's so deserving of it because he's so talented. But at the time, he was a young kid working for me, and this is how we teach them. I said, Jason, go and see Professor Schlink and buy The Reader, and you're going tonight, whatever, get on the last plane to Europe. I don't care if it's an airmail flight, go and see him. And I said, Jason, one other thing. If you don't get it, don't come back. And I also said, tell Bernard Schlink I said that, because one of the things sometimes, if you have an honest reputation, people will believe you, for saying that. I never meant it, whatever, but I understood that the effect it would have. First of all, I knew that Schlink would laugh, and Jason knew I wasn't serious. But the story you can tell with that was an icebreaker because Schlink wouldn't see him. So finally, he went up to Schlink, whatever, and said, I'm telling you, my boss is Harvey Weinstein. And he said, if I don't get this book, I can't come back to America, and he means it. Bernard Schlink laughed, said, okay, let's meet. Jason's so articulate and erudite in a room. They talked for an hour and a half, and I called him. I said, this is how I see the movie. And over Jean-Jacques Annaud, Claude Berry, some of the greatest filmmakers ever, he gave us the book. I also spent a lot of money on it, too. Don't think he gave it to us, whatever. He didn't give it to us. We spent a lot, but the big thing was we got it. And Anthony Minghella was always going to direct it, and that was what I said to Schlink. I said, look, I've done Coal Mountain with that. I said, this is the movie next for Anthony to do. And Anthony had read it by that time and agreed to do it. So I said, that's the way we're going to do this movie. And then Anthony made his series of films, and then he got sick. And And Stephen Daldry had always wanted to make it, and I said, Anthony, you'll produce it, let Stephen direct it. And we had so many delays and so many crazy things that happened on that movie. But it was a point where the Weinstein Company was down, and I wasn't concentrating on movies. But this movie revved me up because I loved this project for so many years. And when we finished with it, and it was a $20 million movie that grossed $120 million worldwide, won Kate Winslet the Oscar and won awards everywhere. It just revived my faith in movies. So for me, it was the most important movie that the Weinstein Company made at that moment, because it just fueled my love of cinema back. And the fact that a movie like that, with its subject matter, could be so successful. And David was a big reason too, besides Kate, how great David was, and how great Daldry was.
We've been talking a lot about German actors and everything, but we are in Zurich, in Switzerland, and we have a lot of Swiss members or Swiss people from Switzerland in the audience. Is there anything that you would say? Have you ever done anything for the Swiss people?
I have, and it's been unreciprocated. And that's why I never came to Zurich, because I thought maybe you don't like me. Because years ago, there was a movie with Gérard Depardieu and my friend Jean-Pierre Rapneau, a great French filmmaker. If you don't know his work, just the history of French cinema is wrapped in his thing. They made this incredible movie called Cyrano De Bergerac. It was the French entry for the Oscar, and it was released by this company, Sony Classics, and we always had a great rivalry with those guys, but they do great work, and that was a great movie. And I don't know, something pissed me off, or pissed our company off, whatever it was. Sometimes rivalries do that. I always say, don't let the tiger out. And we had a movie called Journey of Hope, and it was a small Swiss movie about immigration and a family that comes, crosses the mountains into Switzerland. And it was David versus 3 Goliaths, because everybody said Cyrano was going to win. And on the night of the Academy Award, everybody expected Cyrano to win, except the Oscar went to Journey of Hope, the Swiss movie. And it won, and none of you guys sent me candy. None of you guys sent me an invitation to come here. The Swiss government didn't say, we're going to give you a Swiss Army knife watch, economy ticket on Swiss Air, zero, whatever. So I said, wow. When my left foot won in Ireland, we partied for 5, we closed every pub in Dublin. Daniel Day-Lewis, if there was a pub open, we closed it, I promise you. There was nothing we didn't do. Even when Glorious Bastards getting nominated for 8 Oscars, we went back to Berlin and, had the party we didn't have. But Switzerland, I gave you the Oscar against Cyrano. Nothing, zero, whatever. Nadja was the first person to invite me somewhere.
I think now everyone knows, and you have to come back. Harvey, I think there's so many stories. We should extend this class, I think, for another 4 hours. But I think now it's time, because we have so many people here who are dying probably to ask you a question. So if there's a question from someone in the audience, there's a gentleman right there. I think we have a microphone. It's going to be handed to you. Gentleman right there. Give us 1 second. Young lady. No, further down, right here. The guy with the full hair.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm a huge fan of the Scream franchise, and I'm absolutely looking forward to see the television show. I'd like to ask you if it plays in the same world like the movie series, and if there's hope to see the old cast, and what it means for Scream 5 on the big screen.
The TV series will be a little bit more supernatural, according to my brother, and I'm urging him, to do Scream 5, and end it, as the final, you're supposed to end it with Scream 4, but he let everybody live, But I said Scream 5, Bob, get it? The end, you know what happens at the end, right? And. But he's very affectionate towards it. So they're going to do the series, and then I think I'm begging him to do the movie and just end it. Whatever. We've milked that cow. Whatever. And I think the series will be fun because it's going to be new and cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Another question. The lady over there, third row. Ja, Sie. Oh, da kommt das Mikrofon. So.
You've worked with Colin Firth quite a lot, and I'm interested to know how The King's Speech was such a small film, and as soon as you picked it up, it just blew away. And now you've picked up The Railwayman. Will the same thing happen with The Railwayman?
Well, the King's Speech I didn't pick up. The Railwayman we acquired. The King's Speech we produced. So, you know what I mean, there was, you know, a lot to do with that. Colin Firth, you know, and I have made 10 movies. And the reason we got close was in 1993, kind of at the beginning of my career, he and I made a movie called Hour of the Pig. It was a script by Leslie McGahee, and actually the script was brilliant. And Leslie directed the movie too. Now that wasn't the brilliant part. The brilliant part was that Leslie had a great script. So me and Colin, and the script was about a guy who defends a pig, you know what I mean, who's accused of witchcraft. And Alexander Desplat, yes, it was sexy. Alexander Desplat did his first score. So Colin, myself, Alexander, who did the King's Speech music, were all united on this movie, and we kind of liked it. You know, the audiences, I don't think they loved it, and the critics were kind of men's on it. So when you're in one of those situations with somebody, you get to know them really, really well. And we've done 10 movies together, and I think The Railwayman is extraordinary, and I think it's tonight. So if you haven't seen it, you should see that. And then there's a movie that we produced tonight called One Chance, which if you just want to feel good and have fun, it's not the most intellectual movie in the world, but it is really, really well done. David Frankel, who did Devil Wears Prada, is a sensational entertainer, and this is a really inspiring story.
You just mentioned The Railwayman and your movie One Chance. Is there anything else that you've noticed that has been shown at the Zurich Film Festival that you say is a really brilliant movie? I mean, you just mentioned...
We're going to distribute The Immigrant, James Gray's movie in the United States, but that's an acquisition. I will tell you that outside of the movies that we made this year and, you know, the ones we acquired, I have to say that because I feel that way. I saw the best movie I've seen this year, which is Prisoners. And it is such an extraordinary work of art. And why I should be promoting Warner Brothers movie when they tortured me on The Butler. They made me call it Lee Daniels The Butler, but instead I made them $10 million of P&A for free because I had so many lawyers suing them that every time we would do it, we'd call a press conference. And they'd fall for the same thing each time. And I kept going, my God, this is like The Well that just we are not going to give that title. We're going to protect our 11-minute silent short film. And I'm going, continue to say that, because writers would start to get more and more pissed off, the publicity. 40% of the audience came and saw The Butler because Warner Brothers made that protest, and we played them, you know, like, forget it. It was even I had to say it was painful, you know, whatever, torturing them like that. Nonetheless, they made a great movie, and they're good guys, and it's called Prisoners, and Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal are amazing, and Dennis, the director, and Aaron, I mean, who wrote it, and Alcon, the company who was brave enough to make this incredible movie. I mean, it's incredible. I like genre movies when they're at the top of the game, like Jean Melville, you know what I mean, you know, when he made his great genre movies. This is as good as that, and that for me is the highest praise I can give a film. It's great.
Thank you. Gentlemen over there in the back, standing up.
Hi, my name is Alex. Oh, are you listening? Yeah, sorry. There's a lot of talk about this year about the implosion, Hollywood implosion. There's blockbusters coming out. They're flopping in America. Where do you see, and talents going to television, so where do you see the future of cinema, and do you see it in television or in the internet and Netflix things?
Well, I think that Netflix has revolutionized the world in a great way because, you know, I will tell you, my young daughters, you know, of all things, saw a movie called Sissy, whatever, you know, I'm sure you all know that, you know what I mean? And I had to answer who Rami Schneider was. I left out the ending of who Rami Schneider was. And you know, and they loved this princess story. And they found it on Netflix, you know, in the children's thing, and they were, you know, they had a dubbed version, you know, and there all of a sudden they're watching this wonderful movie about Germany. So Netflix to me is revolutionary. That's why we did a deal with them. We could have done a deal with anybody, but they're so far superior in their attitude and taste. And Ted Sarandis, the head of the company, loves movies, and that's really important. And he loves documentaries and foreign films, and he doesn't discriminate. So it's amazing to have that, because the American broadcasts are always the same thing. It's black and white. I can't put it on my air, whatever. It's a documentary. We know it's a fucking documentary. It's Fahrenheit 9/11. It grossed $250 million. That means a lot of people saw it. It's still a documentary. We don't play documentaries. And they don't play art films and the usual. So to have somebody with that kind of expansive brain is great. So I see a revolution there, and I see, because of Netflix, the ability that there'll be more filmmakers like yourselves who can go out and make the kind of movies that you like, as opposed to the kind of movies the studio like.
Gentleman over there on the right-hand side. Ja, da an der ganz außen, genau. Noch ein Ticken weiter, super.
During the Cannes Film Festival, you spoke up for the European cultural exception. Why does an American entrepreneur speak up for French protectionism?
I think that it wasn't protectionism as much it was keeping a cultural imperative, for the directors, of movies. I do think that writers also are the artists behind movies, so I think they have to be protected as well too. And I just thought the idea of not making a cultural exception would actually close down the French movie system. And I felt that the idea that 140 French movies are made every year, I think, is a gift to all of us. And it was a gift that I didn't see, turning away. I mean, I'm sure there are better things that we can spend money on than making movies, with hospitals, children, et cetera, but I have no faith in the French government as it stands that they would do anything even remotely as smart as that. So better to keep the cultural imperative.
The lady over here. Können Sie aufstehen kurz? Dann sehen wir Sie. Super.
Nice to meet you. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Talking about writers, there's this famous saying that it's 90% transpiration and 10% of inspiration. How would you measure the distance or the relation between craftsmanship and inspiration?
Well, when Quentin Tarantino gives you a script, you read it, you can see the movie. It's just a spectacular reading the script for the first time and then eventually seeing the movie. Of course, he enhances it and makes the world, love the visualization of it. But, there have been so many times when I've read a great script and gone, this is great and this is amazing. And I've actually had, I've never had fight with a writer. And all the time I'm at the Weinstein Company, and I can't say the same about a director, but I will tell you that most of the times I've had fights is when I preserve the vision of the writer. And I have actually had directors so contaminate great writing, even when the writing was part of their company. James Ivory, may he rest in peace, has a woman named Ruth Javala who worked for him, and this is why it was tough for me to make Merchant Ivory movies. She wrote the most wonderful script of Mr. and Mrs. Bridge, and he changed things there that were so, in his creative vision, whatever, that were just so not worthwhile. He was a great filmmaker, so I don't want to take that away from him. But on this particular project, he had a difference with her, and she is still with us and a marvelous writer. And I fought very often sometimes on behalf of the writer when a director just takes the script and just takes that original vision that we all agreed on and just goes south, for maybe he had a bad day with his girlfriend. I don't know what the hell they do, but 90% don't, but the 10% that do, don't fear them, producers. Just you know that you're smart and know that you're right and have the right instinct, and they'll come around to your way of thinking because it's the right way of thinking.
Gentleman over here.
Yeah. Hello, Harvey. Nice to meet you. On Friday night at the Zurich Film Festival, I saw this movie Freedwell Station, which completely blew me away, and I noticed you acquiring the rights of this film. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you came across that film and what you can tell about this film?
Well, first of all, I should have said that movie right away, as other movies that we're involved with. We have the worldwide rights to that movie. We didn't touch a frame of that. It's directed by Ryan Coogler, who's an incredible example of a first-time filmmaker. Is he here? Okay. Ryan, stand up. And what's great to see is he got great critical, reception in America, won a prize in Cannes, and won a prize in Sundance. And I think at the beginning, the movie grossed $16 million, which for that movie is a lot of money. But I do not think that's the end of that, because I think there are awards and things to come for that film, which I think it so richly deserves. So there'll be round 2. He's a boxing fan, and he's going to get his round 2.
Question from the lady right here in the first row.
So thank you for the question there. My question is, Grace of Monaco had the release date in November and was pushed back to April. So you basically took it out of the award season of the Oscar race. Why? Because maybe there are greater competitions, or you don't have to, or you want to change the marketing strategy, or because of Fruitvale Station, because you want to push other movies?
The only reason is because it just wasn't ready. You know what I mean? In other words, it's October. The movie was opening November 27th. The score wasn't ready. I mean, just a lot of things weren't ready. And this is, I think, the most competitive season I've ever seen in an Oscar race and an awards race. There are great movies. I saw 12 Years a Slave, which is an amazing film. And Steve McQueen's done an amazing job. And the 2 actors, Chewie and Lupita, are amazing. And Fassbender too, while we're at it. But it's going to be a tough race, this year. And if you're not ready, don't get into it. I heard that, I don't know that all other movies are going to be moved around too. You gotta, we gotta have time to we played no festivals on that movie. The movie wasn't ready to play any festival. So it's hard to go to an Oscar race without at least some festival exposure. Don't worry, that movie, she's great in the movie from what I've seen, and she's fantastic, and the movie's going to be fantastic too. And not only that, it's going to be very glamorous and elegant. And I think it's going to be big. I know that I love Making My Week with Marilyn. I think this is going to be bigger than that, and in the same category of classy, intelligent filmmaking.
We have only time for 2 more questions. There was a lady over here on that side. And then let's wait and see.
Thank you for the chance here. Czech Republic, Prague. I'd like to ask about the Chinese market and its influence. It's growing quite a lot, and even the filmmakers from America have to do compromises, including Tarantino. So what's your opinion on that? Thank you.
Well, okay, we had to take out, 2.5 minutes of the movie. And trust me, Quentin was not happy about that. 20 seconds and Quentin's not happy. 2 seconds and he's not happy. But, one of the reasons that I worked to convince him to do that was I think that movie is so important that young Chinese audiences see the movie. So to give up the 2.5 minutes, I mean, slavery is in there. The beatings are in there. Quentin's toughest political movie, dealing with the slavery issue in a way that he did, paving the way for other films to do that. And I don't think, other films would be quite as brutal, without Quentin going there in the tough way that he did. And I just think it's more important that people see it in China. We wouldn't have cut for anywhere in the world. If they would have said, hey, England's not going to show the movie for unless you take 2.5 minutes out of it, we would have not played England. But really, let China see these films. Those kids will get freer. Those kids will be more educated. Those kids will aspire to do things, and we won't have Cold Wars. We'll have movie fun instead.
Last question from the gentleman all the way in the back.
Hi, Harvey. Everyone sort of makes mistakes in their careers. But you learn from your mistakes. What are the biggest lessons you've learned from mistakes that you've made?
I made a doozy. Years ago, I was supposed to see a movie, and and somebody said to me, "It's not that great," and whatever. And then somebody else said, "It's great," and not great, yes, great. Come to a meeting, don't come to a meeting. I was 20 minutes late to see this movie, and I kind of said, "Wow, visually it's really great, but I don't get it. Something's weird, something's off." And I walked away. Whereas other people in my company said, Harvey, it's great. And I said, why is it great? They said, well, you didn't see the goddamn first 20 minutes of the movie. You don't understand this, or this. I said, I don't know, whatever. The movie was La Femme Nikita, whatever. And that was one of the biggest goofs ever. So if you see me 10 minutes early, you know why.
Harvey, last but not least, I mean, there are a lot of filmmakers in the audience, a lot of people who are inspired by what you've done. And this is sort of like a typical question, but is there an advice that you have for young and upcoming filmmakers to have a career anywhere close to yours?
Well, first get Stefan to interview you because he did all his homework and he did a sensational job. And I really mean that. And this was a question that he told me he was going to, ask because he was concerned about the audience and the purpose of the Q&A or the masterclass, or, and I will tell you that it's material. I mean, it's, in other words, that reading when I was 11 and 12 years old, having the eye accident at the time didn't seem like a great idea, but again, serendipity interfered, and I've been told things all along, and I followed the advice of the people who are older in my industry, and I keep people on. I have people who are 82 years old working for us because I love them. Maybe they're not move as fast as they used to, but the advice that I learned from older people, I mean, that was something that my father taught us. The second thing is the material again. If you think that you have to buy the #1 bestseller, don't, whatever, you don't have to. Go back in time. You can find a book that was written in 1940 that's great. Bernard Schlink's detective novels, most of them haven't been made, and they're damn good. Somebody with a vision can do those. But even easier than that is Jane Austen is in the public domain. Anybody can make Emma. We made it, whatever, but you can make it again. Maybe you can make it better too. And so many books, whatever. Nobody's made, The Red and White, for example. They've done as miniseries, they're all terrible. Whatever. It's such a great book that could be made into a tough, incisive movie. So reading any Chekhov short story, any Tolstoy novel, they're there, they're waiting for you. Just adapt them well. Get great material, at the end of the day. And I think that the writing is so important. If you think that you're going to overcome bad writings with a great director, that's not going to happen, whatever. You can never overcome bad writing no matter what you do. And bad marketing, or great marketing can't fix bad writing either. So there's great source material out there. You can find it, and you can find it for free. And I would say work hard in that area. Get a great script.
Thank you so much, Harvey Weinstein. It's been an honor to have you in Zurich. This is your applause. All the very best.